I'm Cynthia, and I'm the host of the reality series CPS the Horror Stories. I'm not an attorney or a social worker, but I'm a mom who had her children kidnapped by CPS, and after 2 years of fighting, I did get my kids back. Cheryl, can you introduce yourself?
I'm Cheryl. I live in Pennsylvania. I have 3 kids, and I've been dealing with CPS for 9 years, I want to say.
Were you in the foster care at all?
No, when I was a kid, my mother worked for the Pentagon. My dad owned his own company. We lived right outside of DC. I had a very good upbringing. And then when I was about 8 or 9, my parents split up and my entire world just went crazy. I ended up being placed with my grandmother because they said my parents couldn't figure things out. They tried to say it was voluntary and then it was involuntary. So I'm a little shady on what actually happened because so many people give me many different stories. It was intense as a kid.
Wow.
But yeah, so this has been going on in my life for 9 years. My
So,
kids are
why did they show up in your life the first time?
Okay, the first time they showed up because this is gonna sound so stupid, but it's what actually happened.
Yeah.
My long-term boyfriend and I had split up. My son was 3 or 4, and my daughter was like 1 or 2, so real young. And there was nothing in my area for me anymore, so I decided to move to New York State with my mother. I told my family I was staying with my grandmother at that time because, like I said, we'd split up. I moved in with her. She called CPS because I was taking the kids, and she was upset about that. And just the allegations she made were intense. They had no proof of anything. They really couldn't stop me from moving. I moved to New York, so they transferred my case to Onondaga County, who came out to the house. Everything was unfounded, and it was fine. A couple months later, I get a letter in the mail. I have to come back to PA to go to court because I took my kids over state line without what's called an affidavit of relocation from their biological father. The state said that somehow made me negligent and that my grandmother was getting custody of my kids. They had to come back to Pennsylvania. They were taken from me that day, the day of court. I had never been proved to be a negligent mother. My children were never been proved to be in any type of harm. And I was like, okay, so maybe it's just because I'm not in PA. I picked up my entire life and came back. And this went on for months, fighting back and forth. This allegation and that allegation. I couldn't have my kids. I had to have supervised visitation, which I didn't understand. Probably about a year later, I got my kids back because they had nothing. And then my grandmother started using children's services like a weapon. Every time she was upset with me because she had visitation with them, which was insane to me. She's their great grandmother.
Sorry, my computer's going off.
It's fine. Every time she didn't get her way, she somehow ended up getting visitation, which she's a great grandmother, was crazy. Like I said, I couldn't believe that I was being court ordered to let this woman have visitation with my kids. They were in therapy. She had them on so many medications that I couldn't even keep track of it all. I had to have a book. And every time she got mad, if she was running late and I said something about it, 2 days later, CPS showed up at my door with another claim. I have 3 file folders full of paperwork. Unfounded. The kids were fine. Everything was good. This is unfounded. That's unfounded. Then I met, who's now my husband, 7 years ago. We moved in together. She took us back to court. They tried to say that he couldn't be in the house even though I was pregnant at the time and needed his help. It was crazy. And then when my youngest, who's now 5, was about 8 months old, CPS showed up at my door at 9 o'clock at night. I wasn't there. I had gone to the store to pick up diapers and wipes and stuff. I had the baby with me. He was napping when I left, and took my kids. They hadn't come out at all. I hadn't seen them in months. And then all of a sudden they're there with, I guess, 2 state troopers to take my kids. They refused to tell us why. I even had, when I finally got in touch with them, I had my lawyer on the phone. He's like, you legally have to give them a reason, like why you're taking the kids. And she's like, well, no, we don't. And I couldn't understand what was happening. So, you know, I have the baby and they're like, well, you have to surrender the baby. I said, that's not happening. I won't come home. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, you know, where are my older 2 kids? And they're like, well, listen, the kids have to go to my grandmother's house. And I was like, well, I'll take, you know, my youngest over. I'll take my daughter over. But I'm staying with her. She's nursing. I can't leave, you know, her when she's nursing. I don't have any milk stored up because she's always with me.
Are those your children in the back?
So my husband decided to play tickle me time with my little 5-year-old. So she's like running.
Did you get your kids back?
I did. It was, I showed up there in December. It was just before her first Christmas. I stayed with her at my grandmother's house with my children because, like I said, I refused to leave her. That was the only way she was going there. We had court, a emergency hearing 2 days later. And the judge actually caught them in like 3 lies. It caught CPS in like 3 lies. First, they said that they weren't sure who my 5-year-old, who her dad was. So that's why they sent her to my grandmother's house. And my mother-in-law is like, I would have taken her. She's my biological grandmother. They didn't even look for any relatives outside of her, outside of the grandmother. And, you know, the court was like, well, absolutely. Well, we're trying to figure this all out. She is going with the grandmother, which infuriated my grandmother. My older 2 kids had to stay there. And that was December 18th. Now we had our hearing January 11th. They couldn't produce any proof that I had done anything wrong. And the judge is like, absolutely not. You guys have played around with these kids. At that point, it was like 6 years. He's like, they're not emotional ping pong balls. And those were his words. He's like, they're going back with their mother. You can't prove to me that she has done anything wrong. Good. So he's going to be picking them up today. You have an hour to return custody. I was like, it's not going to take me an hour. I'm going to go from here to there and get them. Well, when my, back in December, when my youngest had to go with my husband's mom, she wasn't home. She was working in Ohio. So her husband and his sister went to pick up my daughter. And it was snowing. My grandmother refused to relinquish custody. We actually had to get involvement to get her out of there. I was away from her for an hour and a half throughout the court and waiting for him to pick her up. And it was horrible. By the time she got to me, she was starving. I hadn't nursed her in almost 2 hours. It was the worst, but they did give them back to me. In the last probably year and a half, I actually talked to CPS not too long ago because I got another call, and they told me that she has called CPS 19 times in the last year and a half.
How many times?
19.
Who did?
My grandmother, the great-grandmother of the 2 older kids. 19 times. She uses it as a weapon when she doesn't get her way. Now, when we had to go to court, not the last time, but the time before that, we were in the waiting room, and my daughter, who is now 11, she was like, I want to say 8 or 9 at the time, was covered in flea bites because the great-grandmother had at the time 4 small dogs. She only has 1 now, but she has 4 small dogs. And I said something to the caseworker. I said, you know, this is insane. I want this. I want a note made of this. She refused to document anything, refused the grandmother's house is filthy. There's animal feces everywhere. There's absolutely no counter space. My kids are getting bit up. My son is losing weight. Well, it just so happened that the judge's like right-hand guy, the guy that like stands there with him, was walking by and forced CPS to make notation of it. And that's where kind of things really took a turn. We ended up getting a guardian ad litem. We had the children do like a family-based therapy situation, and the great-grandmother got caught in more and more lies. But yet the judge was still allowing her visitation, knowing that she's emotionally damaging the kids. Family-based therapy and the guardian ad litem, they all said it. We've caught her in so many lies. She's causing the children emotional trauma. And yet the judge still lets her see them. And as a mom, I'm feeling powerless, because my son, who you remember was 3 or so when this started, is 13. He just had his 13th birthday. And he's still being forced to have contact with her, and he hates it. And it's just doing more and more damage. And because how they have my schedule at this point in time is she gets him every other weekend plus Monday night for 3 hours. And in the summertime, she gets him 1 week out of every month plus a visit on the third weekend. So other family members don't get to see the kids because they're not around. And my son's having more and more behavioral issues, which they're trying to say is because of me. And I was like, well, it's not. And he's even told them, I don't want to go. You're forcing me. And I don't like this. I had to take them to so many doctor's appointments when we were trying to get all this resolved. The guardian ad litem came in and said, well, she is willing to back off. I said, oh, really? For my kids? She's willing to back off. She's like, yeah, but she wants to have, be able to have a say at the school and doctors. And I said, doctors is a deal breaker. She has no right to tell me what I can and cannot do with my children to the doctors.
This is your mother, you said, or grandmother?
This is my grandmother, their great-grandmother. It's insane, right? She's not even a grandparent. And she had them on 5 different allergy medicines. She had them on sleeping medication. She had my son on medication for his ADHD, but she had him on 3 different ones. I told you, I had to have a book. At this point, now that my kids have been back in my community.
My mother drugged my children.
Yeah, she basically were like little zombies.
I remember I called my daughter. I called and did a video call with my kids, and my mom had to hold the phone, and my daughter was like this.
Yep. My kids were the same way. They were nodding out, and I'm like, how do you think that is okay? Why is nobody doing anything? And it's frustrating. It feels like we fall through the cracks, like nobody cares. And the lies that CPS made up, we actually had one time where you could tell they didn't have their story straight. And then all of a sudden, the lawyer for CPS gets a migraine and we have to continue the case.
Who?
The lawyer for children and youth gets a migraine and the case has to be continued. I said, absolutely not. I'm not leaving here without an answer. And I kind of threw myself. It wasn't very ladylike of me. But I'm upset. You took my kids away for no reason. Nobody could give me a reason. I even said that to the judge. I said, I deserve an answer. Nobody can give me a straight reason why I don't have my children. He said, I completely agree. You're taking your kids home today. But it's just, for me, it felt like the only reason they wanted them, because while the great-grandmother had them, all of a sudden she's remodeling her house and buying expensive cars. And it was like, she kept trying to go, I want child support. I want child support. I want more. And it was just, I don't even know how to explain that frustration you get when your children are looking at you and they want answers and you don't have any. And to this day, like, that's where my 2 older kids are right now. They're at her house because it's her weekend, and if I don't send them, I'm in contempt, and she could take them away from me again. And it's 10 years of this.
Wow.
Frustrating.
Yeah.
I mean, the judge did put his foot down. Mike was not, but have no relationship with the baby. Any visitation or contact you have with her will be at her parents' discretion. And I haven't let her anywhere near her. She has no idea who that is. She's 5.5 now, and she's never going to know who that is if it's my child.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, my son, like I said, he's 13, and he's at that age where he wants to do his own thing, and he's forced. And he tells we do have to go to work, so we're actually back for a modification. I especially with this pandemic, and they're older, they have school. Why they have to go there on Monday nights? Why can't they have? He's 13 now in Pennsylvania. That's the age where you start to make your own choices. Why doesn't he have a say? He actually got caught, I want to say 4 times, giving the older kid's biological father a bribe to say that they want to be older. I think it was just over that, but she actually got caught doing this, which is illegal, and nobody did anything. Oh gosh, nobody did anything. And in 2016, my house burned down. The school collected donations to help us, and she went to the school and took the money. Said that I had given her permission. She took the money, cashed it. I called the cops because that's theft. And they basically slapped her on the wrist and said, you have to give the money back. They did nothing. She's gotten caught at least 10 times driving around with my children not buckled in, which is against the law, and nobody does anything. It just feels like because of her age, she can do and say whatever she wants and nobody does anything. And it's so frustrating. I feel powerless. And the CPS people come to my house, and I literally the one time we had a male that was our caseworker, and he had a female shadowing him. I don't know if she was like his sidekick or a trainee or who she was. I was sitting outside, I was talking to him, we had a decent line of communication open. He was very honest with me, I was very honest with him, which I liked. My daughter falls. She's probably 2 or 3 at this point. She falls over, hits her leg, and a couple minutes, a bruise starts to show up. And the girl goes, she's got a bruise on her leg right there. We need to process it. And I'm like, you just watched her trip. I wasn't anywhere near her. And he turned around and goes, no, we just saw her fall. She's fine. They're not doing anything. Well, the kids are filthy. And he goes, well, they're playing outside. Like, do you want me to keep my kids cooped up? They're being kids. It's just the amount of times that she can call in. They know at this point that it's not true. They still have to come to my house. I get it. They're doing their job, but they know that it's harassment at this point and nobody's doing anything. This is going on 10 years now. How is this happening? I don't get it. I don't get it. They tried to say that my son needed to go to a facility for treatment because he has ADHD. Last I knew, that wasn't a treatable, you know what I mean? Like, you could take medication for it, but
Right.
since he doesn't take medicine for ADHD, I have ADHD and I don't take medicine for it. He's fine. The only thing that he uses daily anymore is his glasses. I got him off of all that other stuff, and he's actually, a kid now. It's like 2 or 3 years later at this point in time, I'm still working on getting his weight back up because he was so skinny. And I complained about that. The doctor literally told me he has fallen off of the growth chart. Those were his exact words to me. and nobody did anything about it.
How old is he?
He's now 13.
How is he now?
He's still thin, but we're getting there. He finally has some muscle mass back, but he's 13 years old. He's about 5'7". He's a little taller than me. And he doesn't even weigh 100 pounds. I don't even think he weighs 80 pounds. But I took him to a nutritionist. I got him on a better nutritional schedule, which we stick to. We make healthy meals. We eat more frequently. We exercise together. We do hiking together because that's really good for him. But it's frustrating. There's actually been a couple of reports. They were kind of mean to my son. They loved my daughter. She was princess. And there was a time that the great-grandmother's husband drug my son across the floor by his hair and called him a bastard. I don't know if I could say that. He was probably 8 when that happened because he was upset because he wanted to be with his mom.
Who called him that?
Her husband, the great-grandfather would be. There was a time where he had taken his glasses off. I think he was playing in a dirt pile or something. I don't remember. And he slammed him into the wall so hard that it literally knocked the wind out of my child. And nobody does anything. I complain and I ask for help. And nothing. And I actually overheard them talking once at the courthouse that I didn't fit into their criteria for what a mother should be because I color my hair. I'm younger. I mean, yes, I had my son early, but that doesn't diminish me as a mom. It shouldn't diminish me as a mom. And it feels like it does. They down talk to me like I'm still a child. Like, I don't own my own house and pay my bills. It's just, I can't believe that they took my kids away from me for wanting to better my life. And that it's been a 10-year battle that's still going on ever since. My son's he's going to age out of the system before the system does anything about this. And as a mom, that hurts. I hear all of these stories and I see all of these stories and it's hard sometimes to believe that they're real. Everybody always tells me, this is the line I hate the most. Well, if they took your kids, you must have done something that you're not telling us.
I remember
and they look at me like
yeah, it's humiliating. I was just telling one of the ladies that I interviewed earlier how you stop telling people because that's what they say. Well, you had to have done something that sorry, my daughter. You had to have done something because CPS doesn't just take your kids away for no reason.
Yep, I hear that one a lot too. Well, they don't take your kids for nothing. There's something that you're not telling us that it happened. I'm like, no, look through the paperwork. They took my kids away because I moved to New York. Onondaga County came out. They said that everything was fine, that the kids were completely safe, that I was a good mom. My kids were very healthy. And 2 weeks later, Pennsylvania judge takes them away from me. There have been accusations of sexual assault. They tried to say that when my youngest was 8 months old, that my husband punched her in the face so hard that it bruised her and fractured her skull. I'm like, well, where's the paperwork? And I'll never forget the day that I had to take her over there. When I went over there with her, I get her out of the car in her car seat. And I walk to the door and the caseworker goes, "Is that the baby?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh, crap." I'm like, "Yeah, crap is right." Sorry, I have to get a tissue. My mascara is getting in my eyes. I'm like, "Crap is right. My child is completely fine and you took her for no reason. You know you're going to be in trouble because I'm not going to let this go." And they still made me stay there with her. And they called me unreasonable because I refused to let her sleep in this stupid little makeshift bed that she had made her. So I'm in my older daughter's room for the quiet. So I slept with her in my arms so that she couldn't touch her while I was sleeping. And I woke up in the morning and she was gone. I woke up to feed her because my chest had started hurting, which lets me know it's been too long since I fed her last, or it wouldn't be bothering me. So I woke up and she was gone, and I panicked and I got upset and I said, you can't take her without telling me. I'm her mom. I have to feed her. She's screaming that she's hungry and she wouldn't let me have. I was so mad. And they told me that I was being unreasonable and I was being combative because I got upset. I said, well, what if it was your kid that was crying because they were hungry? Wouldn't you get upset?
Who said that?
She called the caseworker. That's what the managing caseworker said.
Wow.
Welcome to Pennsylvania Children and Youth. And there's so many kids that actually do need somebody to help them. But they're wasting their time chasing me around. And I think that there should be some kind of retribution. She's wasting government funding by calling them on me 19 times in less than 2 years. She's wasting resources. And nobody seems to care. And it's like they know that I'm not doing anything. They've been in every nook and cranny in my house. She, her first, this one confused me. It would have been 6 years ago now. She called CPS. Complaint number 1, I'm not feeding my children. Complaint number 2, my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, was beating my children with a belt because they wouldn't eat. So which is it? We're not feeding them, or he's beating them when they don't eat? Because it can't be both. They came out over that. And I even said that to them, like, how could it possibly be both? They tried to make me out to be the bad mom when my house burned down. They literally followed us to the place that we were staying, saying that my kids weren't being taken care of. We just lost our entire life. Like, and it stresses my kids out so bad. Every time somebody knocks on the door and the kids don't know who it is, immediately they go, it's not the children police, is it? My son has actually ran away before. He ran away from her house before.
How old is
She calls him. He's 13 now. At the time he ran away, I think he was like 9. But she calls me asking me if I know where he's at. And I'm like, what do you mean? He wanted to come home, so he was going to go home. I'm like, honey, I live like 15 miles away. You can't walk home. Like, you need to call me. I'll come. I'll come to wherever you are. And it's hard as a mother when I'm sitting here and my kids have to go over there. I don't have a choice. And I'm so worried. Is he going to come home and are they going to hurt him again? You know, physically or emotionally. And I feel overwhelmed sometimes. I mean, I'm glad I have them back most of the way now, I guess is how you could put it. I have custody of them. I have physical custody of them, but she still gets them every other weekend and Monday night. The older two, not the youngest one. She has no contact with her at all. But that's why I applied for a modification, is because they don't want to go. And I feel, especially on a school night, that's too much. They have homework, especially now that he's going into high school. It's going to get a lot harder. But I mean, like, you had to do it for 2 years. How exhausting was that? It's crazy. Imagine doing it for 10. All because you dye your hair, or you're younger, or somebody's angry at you. It's not right or fair.
No.
It's not fair to the kids mostly, because they're going, what happened? And she's filling their heads. She's telling them, your mom didn't want you. Your
Oh.
mom left. She doesn't want you back. Your mom doesn't love you. And they would come over to me and, you know, my son would go, Mom, you love me, right? Like, I love you more than anything. I love you and your sisters more than anything in this entire world, including me. And he's like, I thought so. He's like, well, is this my fault? Was it because I was bad? I was like, you were never bad. Who told you you were bad?
Oh.
He's like, well, that's why I have to be on medicine, because I'm bad. It's intense. I happened to come across this and I was like, wow, 10 years and a lot of stories, things that have happened. They decide who they like. There's one party, like in my situation, it's her against me, and they like her. So they refuse to document anything she does wrong and nitpick at every little thing I do. She tried to say 2 years ago, I want to say 3 maybe, that I was a drug addict.
Who
And I'm
said
like,
what?
the great grandmother, I'm a drug addict. And CPS is like, she's definitely a drug addict. I'm like, I've never done drugs in my life. I had to, at that point, when it would have been in 2010, 11, 2011. It was 2011. Oh, something like that. Anyway, it was the second time that she took the kids. So no, that would have been 4.5, almost 5 years ago. Anyway, when the whole time that she had them, I had to go and pay out of my own pocket to take a drug analysis before I was allowed to pick my kids up for my weekend visitation. I paid $2,000 total, and I never failed one. And the next time we went into the courtroom, they're like, well, we still think she's doing it. And the judge is like, how? Okay, she's got a stack of past tests. And then after that, it was, well, she has a heart condition. That makes her unfit. She can't take care of the kids. Never has it affected my parenting in my life. Yeah, there are days I don't feel good, but my husband is here. He helps out. And I would never put them at risk just because I'm not feeling well. I still get up and cook dinner and clean and everything and, you know, do mom things. It's just every little thing. It feels like if I dye my hair the wrong color, if I cough the wrong way, they're going to show up at my door. It's almost been a month at this point in time since I've seen them. So it's coming.
What health issues do you have?
What?
What health issues?
I have I've had 7 heart surgeries. Yeah.
How many?
7. I have an implant in my chest that helps to record and monitor things, and it can actually like help me restart my heart if it's going crazy. I take heart medicine every day. I actually just saw my heart doctor today. I have sleep apnea, but they think that that's due to the extreme amount of stress in my life, because that can trigger things, and it actually can trigger my heart, just the amount of stress. So I'm working on, you know, I can't get rid of the stress, which I explained in the courtroom. Like, you guys constantly showing up at my door threatening to take my kids is stressful. It's a lot. And it impacts me. You know, my son used to have frequent accidents because he was so stressed out and had so much anxiety, feeling like he was going to get pulled out of my house at any point in time. I mean, the second time they took them, they showed up at my house, like I said, it was like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. They'd never even contacted me. It had been a couple months since I saw them. Then out of the blue, they're at my door with 2 state troopers. Like, could you call me first, give me a chance to defend myself, and refusing to tell me what I did wrong? I hadn't done anything. It's a lot, and nobody holds them accountable. They can go in the courtroom and basically say whatever they want, and there's no accountability. At this point, my mom hasn't seen them in almost a year because there's just no time in the schedule. They can't go on family trips with us because if they miss a visitation, that's on me. She is usually late bringing them back by You know, it's not just like by 1 or 2 minutes. It's an extended period that she's late. I complain because that's technically considered contempt. They don't do anything. But if I have, say, a heart appointment and I'm 5 minutes late getting back for the switch, I get drugged back into court. And CPS shows up at my door and we start all over again. At this point, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to stop this from happening. I can't help my kids with their anxiety by saying, well, they're not going to come back to our house, because they probably are. I don't know how to explain to CPS, you know, she's using you like a weapon. You're letting her do it. You're stressing me and my kids out. You're making our lives like crazy. And it just seems like, you know, the more she does, it goes unnoticed. I don't know anymore, but it actually feels good to talk to somebody about it, because I live in a small area. And if you tell anybody at any point in time that at some point CPS has even come to your house, you know, forget they took your kids,
Right.
You're automatically a bad person. There's a stigma attached to you. You must be a bad mother. And everybody starts watching you under a microscope.
Yeah.
At one point, somebody found out that CPS had taken my kids at one point, and my daughter was crying in the store because I wouldn't buy her a new toy. She hadn't been behaving, so I said no new toy, and they called CPS on me and said that my daughter was screaming because I was beating her, because there's now a stigma attached to me.
Who said that?
It was just, so we live in a small town, there's not even a red light. It was just somebody that saw us at the store, because I now have this stigma attached to me that I'm a bad mother, that I hurt my children, that CPS has taken my children, so I must be doing something to them. So when my daughter was crying over not being allowed to buy a dinosaur, CPS showed up at my door the next day. It's a lot.
What about your parents?
My dad is deceased. He was killed in a car accident in 2010. And my mom, lives in North Carolina.
Where do you live?
Pennsylvania.
Do you have siblings?
Yeah, I have an older sister who's in North Carolina.
And is she part of what's going on?
She had my first nephew about 2 years ago. It'll be 2 years in February. She stays as far away from Pennsylvania as she can because she doesn't want our grandmother anywhere near her son. And it basically divided our family in half. There are the people that agree with her and the people that agree with me. So I lost half of my family. I've lost a lot of the community who pin me as the bad guy.
Of course.
But then, you know, you have the other half who see what's happening. You know, they're in the mix. So I try to tell people, like, when they haven't actually seen anything, like, don't judge me until you actually see it. Because if you saw the amount of paperwork I have that all says I've never, like, you can read through all of it. I haven't done anything wrong. If you look at every page, you will never find something that I've done something bad. I mean, yeah, there is a page in there where I flipped out on her when she took the baby while I was sleeping, but it happens. I didn't hurt my children. I just yelled at her. I don't use corporal punishment in my house. I don't have to. It's just every allegation that is made, it's like I'm automatically guilty. You're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, but that's not how the system works. You're guilty until you can prove yourself innocent.
Agreed, 100%.
And they wonder why more people don't reach out for help. Anytime you reach out for help, you're going to be pegged as a bad person. You know, after the house fire, I was terrified to ask for help. What if they use it against me? It's a lot. And I feel horrible for, like, some of the other ones that I've watched and some of the other women, because I feel you, and I understand that overwhelming frustration and that helplessness and powerlessness you feel. And I hate the fact that every day I live my life just thinking, when are they going to show up again, and are they going to take my kids? I don't have to do anything wrong for that to happen.
Yeah.
Nobody does.
No.
You don't have to do anything wrong. No parent has to do, you don't have to do a single thing wrong. If they decide they want to take your kids, they're going to. And it's because, and most people don't know, every child in foster care, the state gets so much money for them, as do the foster families or the people taking care of them.
Yes,
On top of that, they go after the parents for child support.
yes, I had to pay a big amount of child support.
I paid $564 a month. Yeah. I didn't even make $564 a month. I mean, I did, but after my bills, I literally was going to lose my home. That's why, I hadn't known my boyfriend for that long. But he's like, listen, move in with me. You need something. So it's a lot. Hold on. It's a lot when you have to move in with a guy that you've only been dating for like 6 weeks, because if not, you're going to be homeless and they'll use that against you. Or if your bills aren't paid, they'll use that against you. Or if you have a cat, they tried to say I intentionally got a cat because my daughter is allergic to animal dander. First of all, she's not allergic to animal dander. I took her to the doctors and proved that. Second of all, it's her cat. I see the difference. I see the difference between my older 2 children and my younger child. She's more secure in her life. She doesn't have as much anxiety. She doesn't have as many behavioral problems because she doesn't bounce around like a ping pong ball. She's only ever been taken the one time, and she was 8 months old when that happened. She did have trust issues after that. She was very clingy. She would scream and cry. But I see the difference. My kids, they're more stressed, they're anxious, they have anxiety. She doesn't, because she's never had this court-ordered visitation stuff. She knows that when she goes to bed at night, she's going to be at home. When she wakes up in the morning, she's going to be at home. They don't know that. Speak of the devil. He's on the phone. Don't let the cat eat your hair. But that's there's just way too many details to ever cover, in a video of everything that's ever happened to me. But those are like the big bullet points. Is they literally came after me with anything they could. Sexual abuse, drugs, physical abuse.
Did your kids ever suffer from any type of abuse in care?
My son, like I said, he was physically abused. He was dragged around by his hair. He was hit. He was emotionally abused. He was basically made to be a sister's slave at one point in time. You have to go make your bed and her bed. You have to pick up your toys and her toys. And even though to an adult, it's like, oh, it's just picking up toys, to him, he felt that favoritism,
How does it affect them now with their relationship?
They used to be really close, the 2 of them, because through everything they had each other.
Right.
And he can't stand her now because he feels like she's always been the favorite in these situations, and he's feeling like he's not the favorite. And I try to treat them all as equal as possible so that he doesn't feel that way. I'll tell him, like, listen, I got your sister something, I'm getting you something too. And he adores his youngest sister because he's never felt like he was in competition with her.
Right.
But the 2, they're almost 2 years apart. They're 23 months apart. They used to be, don't hit him in the head. That's not nice. They used to be so close, and now I kind of have to separate them sometimes because they'll really get to fighting.
Isn't it sad? Doesn't it make you so angry that
I hate the relationship they have now. They used to be so close. They were best friends. They did everything together. And now I really have to pay attention. Even just sitting in the back of the car going to the store, I have to make sure that I put the little one in the middle because a squabble will start if I don't. I mean, now that he's getting older, he understands that it's not acceptable behavior, but there are those times where he is so angry that he just explodes and makes this not even a scene, it's more of a Broadway musical. And I'm like, honey, you need to calm down. And he's like, it's not fair. No. Hey, go play. Leave the kitty alone and go play, please. I told you mommy was busy. Go watch daddy. Thank you. But it's hard because I remember what they used to be like.
right?
What I wanted for them. My son never had angry outbursts before. He never used to have accidents like he used to. He's gotten over that now that he's gotten older, but when he first came back, we had to change sheets a lot. And the doctor even said it's anxiety. He's anxious. But the amount of medications, I mean, that's why she had them on all those medications. It basically just zoned them out because they were both so stressed out, angry, and anxious that I don't think she could handle them. He's broken TVs. My son has. He put a dog in the dishwasher once, which I scolded him for because it's not good, but he was mad.
Right.
He wanted to go home, so he stuck the dog in the dishwasher. He didn't turn it on, but thank God. He just trapped it in there. But, like I said, he smashed her TV. He took Sharpie markers to her car. A lot. He's getting better. We're working on it. But I don't want to have to try and put him in therapy again because he doesn't trust people anymore.
Of course not. Would you?
Every time he's, if he's had to talk to a CPS person or something like that, they tell him, I'm just here to help you. And then his whole world implodes. So he doesn't, if I took him to a therapist, he wouldn't talk.
Would you?
So I talk.
Would you trust people?
Oh, I don't trust anybody. I'm a stay-at-home mom now because my anxiety when it comes to a babysitter or anything like that is so high. I can't let somebody watch my kids. What if they don't give them back? What if CPS shows up and takes my kids away from the babysitter and I'm powerless? It just takes the babysitter.
You can't think like that though.
It's terrifying.
No.
I hate that it's done this to me. I hate that I feel this way. I never used to, worry like this, but now I'm so scared.
I know.
My youngest goes to my husband's father's, her grandfather, who literally lives across the road. Like I can see him from my porch. She goes over there for an hour and I'm on pins and needles the whole time, but I don't want my anxiety to affect her life. But it's...
You can't think like that.
Yeah, people don't realize it though. They don't realize that, yeah, you attached the stigma to people that's had their kids taken away, but they don't realize the effect it has, the anxiety you live with after that.
Yeah.
My 11-year-old wants to dye her hair right now. She wants to put like pink streaks or something, like a rose gold or something in her. She's got blonde hair. She wants to put like rose gold or something in her hair. And I'm like, no. Something else Sharon will call CPS. I put chemicals on her head. It's suffocating, but I'm getting better at it.
I color my daughter's hair.
I'm scared to. I want to because she's 11 now. She's and it's a light color. It's not like, she's doing what I did. But I know how the grandmother feels about that. She doesn't like makeup or color. She expects everybody to fit in a box. And I just know that if I do it, CPS is going to show up at my house because it's going to make her mad and she's going to retaliate. And I'm trying to get better about double thinking everything and setting the bar too high.
Yeah.
Sometimes what feels like unrealistic expectations of my kids, because if they don't make honor roll, she's going to call CPS. And it's going to be my fault.
Who is she?
My grandmother, their great grandmother.
How will she know?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I don't know how she finds out half the things she does. Like, she knew I colored my hair before.
What?
She knew when I colored my hair. I hadn't even showed anybody yet. It was dark when I got home. It was late. I hadn't showed anybody that. I get a call at 8 o'clock the next morning. Did you dye your hair pink and purple? How'd you know that? I don't get it.
You know, my mom one time told the social workers that I was driving and had my phone in my hand. I got in so much trouble, and I didn't have my phone in my hand. I had it on the dash.
Yeah. And yet the great-grandmother has been pulled over at least 10 times with my kids unbuckled driving around and nothing ever happened. But you got in trouble for having your phone on the dash.
Yeah, it wasn't it's stupid. And it's like it scares you to put anything on Facebook. It's stupid.
You have to censor everything. You have to live your life with a big censor sign above your head. And people who have never been through CPS and having their kids taken, they don't get that.
Right.
You know, my friends are like, hey, you want to go out? And I'm like, I can't. All it takes is one photograph and I'm going to end up right back in the courtroom. Like, I can't. I'm sorry. You know, my husband's like, oh, you know, have fun with your friends. I'll watch the kids. And I'm like, nope. Nope, I can't do that. But it's cool, though, because then I get to spend more time with the kids. I think my favorite part is when we go hiking, because we're in the middle of nowhere. There's nobody else around to watch us or micromanage what I'm doing, and we can just breathe. It's hard. And everyone's like, oh, well, there's all these mothers out there that are so fake on Facebook. I'm like, yeah, because if we were real on Facebook, y'all would try and call CPS. Like, if I ever posted on Facebook, ooh, had a girls' night out, right, she would say that I was doing drugs and that I was a drunk and that I'm partying all the time, even though it's the first time I've been out since. Last time I went out was July 4th, 2015. I went to a friend's barbecue. I don't know if that counts as going out. But that's the last time I did something. But I would they would peg you as that. And it's hard because you can't really talk to people about how you're feeling or what you're thinking, because either A, they're not going to understand, or B, they're going to basically accuse you.
Right.
And it's hard. And, you know, I don't know about other moms, but I know I had to go through the thing with my kids where they questioned if any of it was their fault. Like, had they done something wrong? Are you mad at me? That's a question I got a lot from my kids. Are you mad at me? Are you mad at me because I had to go to grandma's house? I'm like, no, I'm not mad at you. I'm never mad at you. This isn't your fault. You didn't do anything. And I try not to speak ill of her around my children because, you know, they do have a relationship with her. And I don't want to be that mom that, you know, bashes the other person to the kids. But it's really hard. It's really hard not to bash.
Well, yeah.
Where she does it very openly. I mean, they'll come back and they'll be like, oh, well, grandma said this. And I'm like, oh, well, maybe grandma was just mistaken.
Yeah.
Because I don't stoop to that level.
Right.
It's
Absolutely.
It's hard. And I mean, there is one bad thing. I guess there is one bad thing I do say. I refer to her as the Wicked Witch in my house because I don't want my 5-year-old to like know who that is. And when she has to, you know, like drop the kids off or something like that, I also don't want my 5-year-old like outside or in the windows. I don't want her to be anywhere near her. So I tell her that there's a Wicked Witch coming to drop Wyatt and Sissy off, and she eats fingers and toes. So she has to run and hide. So she goes in, she'll come in and get under her blanket. She's like, I'm hiding. And then after she leaves, I'll come in and go, boo, I found you. And, you know, she giggles, and it's all just a big game to her. It's really hard. It's a lot, you know, and there was at one point when my kids were younger, it would have been 2014. They were home. They hadn't been home that long in a year. And they would get mad at me. And I mean, they're young at this point in time. You know, they're little.
Yeah.
They're like 4 and 6 or little. And they would get into trouble. Like, I would tell Bug, my oldest, I would be like, you can't play I think it was the Wii. I don't know. It's the one where the disc goes in sideways. But I'm like, you can't play it because you left the discs out again and they got scratched up. And he would stomp up to the top of the stairs and go, well, then I'll just call the children police and tell them that you're hitting me.
Who said that?
My kid did when he was younger, because Sharon their grandmother basically taught them that it is a weapon. He watched for so many years that when she didn't get her way, she called the children police. That's how the kids refer to them. She called the children police, and the children police came, and then eventually she got her way. So for a young kid, they see that pattern and they're like, well, can I get my way doing it? And they're little. They don't understand the implications of saying something like that it's a very serious allegation. So I sat down and I explained it to him. I went to the top of the stairs. I said, listen, I understand you're mad right now. You're mad at me because you can't have your gaming system. But let me explain to you, if you were to do that, what would happen? And I said, you know, if you were to call the children police and you were to say that, they would come to our house and they would take you again and they would take you away from me. Do you want to go away from me? And he's like, well, no. I said, well, then the only thing you can do in a situation like that is be honest. You have to always tell the truth, because if you don't, things can happen. And you don't want them to, right? And he's like, well, no. I said, so if the children police were to ever ask you, what do you have to do? He's like, well, I have to tell the truth. I said, okay, what's the truth? He goes, I'm mad at you. I said, I understand. And it's okay. It's okay to be mad at me, because there's some days that I get mad too. And it's okay to have those feelings. But it's what you do with them that matters. And he's like, okay, and they've definitely, I think that was like the only time he ever said it to me. But just the fact that he thought that was the way to get his way, just like, I was like, what? It shocked me. I couldn't believe when it came out of his mouth. And like, after I explained it to him and kept my composure and we worked it out and he understood like how serious it can be when you lie and you make up stories and stuff, I went back down into my room and I just cried. And, my husband, now my boyfriend at the time, comes in and he goes, what's the matter? And I explained it to him and he's like, well, don't worry about it. Everybody knows you don't hit the kids. I said, I understand that, but it only takes one person making a call to CPS and they're going to believe it, even without evidence. It takes one person and they could take them away.
My daughter is threatened to call CPS and run away. And I'm like, what do you think is going to happen?
People who have never had that happen to them don't understand just the fear, not even the fear, but just the pain that lances through you when your kid says that to you. And part of you wants to look at them and be like, how dare you threaten me like that? And the other part is like, okay, I have to be a mom. I have to keep my composure. I have to explain to them how serious that is. And I've always raised my kids with that, that you have to be honest, because if you feel like you can't be honest about something, you shouldn't be doing it. And that's always how I've told them things, you know, if you ever have to remind yourself not to say something, it's
Right.
probably something you shouldn't be doing in the first place.
Right. How are
It's
your
hard.
kids now?
Getting better. They still hate having to go over. They still have anxiety that, you know, I notice, especially now that my son's getting older, he definitely, I can see him watching things that he does, or like I'll catch him. There are times when they'll come back, I'll catch my daughter, especially, she'll go to say something and they go, oh. I'm like, what were you gonna say? She's like, nothing. I just kind of looked at her, she goes, Grandma told me not to say anything. I'm like, okay, well, you know, you can always tell me, right? And she's like, I know. I said, you know, honey, it's the same thing that Mom tells you. If it's something that you can't say, you shouldn't be doing it. And I mean, one time she finally did tell me, it was simple. It was something as simple as she hadn't been at her house at all, that she had stayed at her aunt's house the entire visit there because her grandmother had some type of operation or surgery or something done and wasn't well enough to take care of her. And I was like, well, why would she lie to me about that? You know, I have a right to know where you're at, to know that you're safe.
Who did?
Their grandmother told them not to say that they weren't there. They had stayed at my aunt's house, her youngest daughter's, because she had the grandmother had knee surgery. I don't know, some type of surgery that made her incapable of taking care of the kids. I was like, well, why didn't she just say something and I would have kept them here? Like, they didn't even go over to see her. They ended up staying at the aunt's house. But I was like, you know, why would she lie to me about, why would she tell my kids not to say anything to me about that? I have never once gotten upset for an undue reason. I mean, as long as my kids were safe. I mean, yes, it's annoying that she took time away from me, that she didn't even utilize herself. But as long as my children are safe. And then we had a recent one that actually happened this summer on one of her week visits. My kids came home with sun poisoning. And when I say sun poisoning, I mean blisters so bad over the top half of, like, the top half of my son's body had blisters so bad he couldn't even put a shirt on. And she couldn't understand why I was upset. And again, I said something and nobody did anything about it. My daughter had sun poisoning so bad, like right here in her chest area, that she had to sleep with her head strained way back and like an ice pack on her chest. And the blisters, when they popped, they cried and cried. And I tried to keep aloe and stuff on them. I went through so much aloe. But there's nothing I can really do to make that feel better. It just has to heal. I took him to the doctors. I made a report. But nobody cared.
So do they understand now the consequence of calling CPS?
Oh, yes. My son has developed what I feel is a very unhealthy anger towards the children police. I mean, I understand his anger and I validate his feelings because he has a right to feel however he wants to feel, but the depth of his anger is intense. It's intense. He loathes them. That's a word he's used to me before. He loathes them. And I try to explain to him that there are some situations where kids do really need help. There are. But it's the fact that they seem to be unable to differentiate between the two, between the kids that do need help and the parents who are doing the best they can, who absolutely love and adore their children and are being targeted anyways. So I think people think that once CPS gives your kids back and they're out of your life, that it just stops there. They don't realize that this is like a lifelong thing that you're going to deal with. They've literally changed the course of not just your future, but everybody's future involved.
True. So true.
It's a lot. And, you know, my son is always going to distrust people now. Having charismatic old soul now has a very healthy level of paranoia that I try to help him with. But there are times where he just thinks that everybody's out to get him. Everybody outside our family home is out to get him. And I'm like, that's not true. But it's just something that we have to deal with because of that.
Wow.
It's sorry. She keeps peeking her head in the door. I don't know if she's playing peekaboo or what she's doing. I'm a stay-at-home mom, so she's literally used to like clinging to me, and the fact that I've been back here and she hasn't is bugging her a little bit. But the best time for me to, you know, do something like this is when my older kids aren't home, because I really don't want them to overhear things and bring up all those old emotions that we've worked really, really hard to cope with.
Right.
So it's just, I think when people call CPS and they do things like that, they don't realize that they're not just attacking you, that this is causing emotional trauma to the kids. You know, it's going to affect them regardless of what you do. They're going to question things. They're going to get angry. They're going to retaliate. It's just, and CPS doesn't seem to get that either. It's like, it almost sometimes feels like they get enjoyment out of coming in and being like, I can tell you what to do with your kids, and if you don't do it, I'm taking them. There's nothing you can do to stop me. And I don't get how people do the job, to be honest with you. I don't get how people enjoy taking kids away from loving homes. I just don't understand it.
It's not fair. It's not. No.
I feel targeted. There are times when it's just, ugh. Other moms have felt that way. But it's like, dude, you have come to my house. I mean, at this point, we're all on first name basis. Like, that's not healthy. It's a lot.
Absolutely.
Hoping it'll end before my kids age out. I'm hoping they can at some point have some semblance of a normal childhood where they can go to sleepovers and have parties, you know, birthday parties where it doesn't turn into a catastrophe, or go stay at my mom's house for a week in North Carolina and have fun. You know, normal kid things. I can't wait until this is over so they can just be kids. Because they can't do that right now. Because of visitation, they can't see other family members, and they can't go to sleepovers or slumber parties. They have to live their life according to a piece of paper that CPS deemed was necessary. People that see me for 5 minutes here and 5 minutes there get to dictate how we have to live our life without even actually knowing us. And if we don't follow what they say, they take my kids away. So it's hard. I feel bad for my family because my mom just ignoring us. And follow what they say, they take my kids away. Anyways, that's my story. Some of it. Mommy will be in just a minute, okay? I'll be right out.
How are the kids now?
But anyways, that's my story. Getting there.
How are the kids now?
They're getting there. They're getting better. They're, you know, learning how to cope with things. We work with it a lot. They get frustrated when they have to go. They feel suffocated sometimes, or they feel like their life is dictated to them. But I remind them that I'll always love them and that it won't last forever.
And?
So I that's all I can do at this point in time. I can't make them any promises. I can't promise them this will never happen again. I can't make them any guarantees. The only thing I can guarantee them is this isn't going to last forever. At some point, you are going to get old enough that this is going to end, and then we can just move forward. The one thing I can promise them is that when they have children, I will never do this to them. That's about the best I have. It's a lot to, I mean, if I were to go through it in chronological order, we'd be here for 8 hours. But just the highlights is enough to show you that stories are crazy. People go through intense things, and sometimes it just sucks.
How do your kids react to you?
My son is very defensive of me. If anybody even looks at me in what he views as a negative way, he gets extremely protective. My daughters are very clingy. They feel like if I'm gone, from their sight, as you can tell, if I'm gone from their sight for too long, that they need to come looking for me, or, you know, they'll start to get worried. It's just, they have a lot of animosity towards her, which, I mean, they should never, even though, you know, she's a great grandmother and she has done some horrible things. The fact that they do sometimes have all those negative feelings towards her, it still hurts, because you should never have to feel that way about your own family. But I understand it. I like the relationship that I have with my kids. I just wish we didn't have to go through all the crap to get here. I like that we're close. I like that my son, you know, he's still, even though he's 13, he still tells everybody, well, my mom's my best friend. I can tell my mom anything. We spend a lot of time together. He, you know, when last year before all this happened, when he would get on the bus, he didn't care that the whole bus was watching. He still gave me a hug and a kiss on the cheek when he left. He tells me he loves me all the time, wants to do stuff with me. He'll even do spa treatments with me just to, you know, spend time together. And I know a lot of it is his anxiety that what if she takes him away again? He wants to do as much with me as he can now before he loses that opportunity. And it sucks that he feels that way. But we're really close now that they're old enough to see that I do love them and I do my very best for them. It's good that at least they know what their truth is, and their truth is, you know, they see mom, they live in the house here with me, they know I might not always get it right, but I really do try. I do. And they know that now. You know, when they were younger, she was able to tell them different things and they might believe her because they didn't know any better. But now that they're older and they can, like, visually see what's going on, they know. And that does make me feel better, because if all else fails, at least my kids know the truth. So it's just frustrating.
Very.
Okay, I'll come make you something to eat in just a minute. Sorry, she's desperate for my attention. She's like, well, I'm hungry, so I know you'll come feed me. I'm like, all right, I'll be right there.
I'll let you go.
Yeah, I don't even think that she's hungry. I think she just wants me. But
give her that attention.
Yeah, I do. She just started kindergarten, so I miss her during the day. So when she gets home, I try and soak up as much as I can.
Absolutely. Well, Cheryl, I thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah, well, thank you for listening. It was nice to get some of that off my chest. I didn't realize how much I've been bottling up.
But
Well, I wish you the best of luck, and if there's ever anything I can help you guys with in the future, let me know.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.